and pushing them out with some boosted ads and regular, and they've been a good thing to show people how popular and how everyday people ride bike share, not just enthusiasts. I'll turn it over to Leah.
Thanks, Jen.
Good work.
Good morning. My name is Leah Sham. I'm the Executive Director of the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. Thank you for caring about bicycling today. You are indeed part of a growing trend. You've heard some of the national statistics. I'm going to share a little bit of our insight and what we've experienced in San Francisco. And I want to say I'm very excited, just a little prelude, that Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom is here, and you're going to see some photos, images, and successes in San Francisco that he very much laid the groundwork for as mayor in San Francisco. And we hope that many other cities follow our lead in days to come, or years, many, many years to come. First, a little bit about us. We run both a 501c3 and a 501c4 organization. We've been around for 40 years, 41 years, who's counting. We do, with our C4, make endorsements for local candidates. A little bit on the state level, but mostly focus on local. And I'll talk about that later. That's unusual in the bike movement, but more and more are thinking about that. You're seeing more and more local and state groups get into the direct endorsing business. What we do on the very broadest level, though, as a nonprofit, is promoting bicycling for everyday transportation. Our goal is growing the number of people bicycling and improving bicycling overall. And we're feeling pretty good about how it's going. The trends that you've heard nationally are very much happening in San Francisco as well. This is a shot of Market Street in San Francisco, if you're familiar. Citywide, over these 6 years, biking increased 71%. On Market Street today, there are twice as many bicycles as cars every day on that street. It's a great kind of example of how the city's doing. And huge kudos, the green bike lanes you see here and the physical separation, those were all added in about 2010 under then Mayor Newsom's watch. And we're seeing these growing trends. Numbers are important, of course, but I want to highlight the types of people riding, the diversity of people riding. It wasn't that, well, it was pretty long ago. When I first started biking in San Francisco, about 18 years ago, it was a little bit lonely as a woman, I'll be honest. It was mostly these tough 22-year-old guys. We remember kind of the messenger culture in many of our cities. I guess it was cool, but it didn't necessarily welcome a lot of folks with open arms. And today, this really is a regular shot, just happens to be a lot of women riding. We see more and more women riding. We see more and more people at either ends of the age spectrum, folks that are older, folks that are younger, families. I say that's maybe the best part of my job as I ride into work every day, is I see at least 1 to 2 families per day. That's my anecdotal data, but literally it is not unusual like it used to be 10 or 20 years ago to see people biking in with their kids. And here's an example. This is actually Bike to School Day coming up in about a week, but in San Francisco we have the largest Bike to School Day that we know of in the nation. We now have 50 schools participating and 2,500 people on this day. We've seen biking to school, this is specifically biking, not including walking, grow by 4% in the last 6 years. That may not sound like a lot, but with a constituency as challenging as families can be, and for a city like San Francisco that really works hard to keep the city family friendly, we've been really excited and impressed by that. Let me pause for a second, a little bit more about us and the coalition. We're actually the largest nonprofit bicycle coalition at the local level in the country as well. We have just over 10,000 members now, and we're also one of the more active groups in the city. I think it's fair to say that we turn out more volunteers than most groups. I'm sure labor is definitely, in terms of contingents turning folks out, especially for elections, the strongest by far. But I would put the Bicycle Coalition right up there, right after that in terms of turnout. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in elections. But in general, our 10,000 plus members donate an average, and we track this, of 11,000 volunteer hours per year. That's everything from coming out to hearings, to writing letters, to being at events, etc. So I'm going to talk about why the numbers matter of people, but also the energy there matters. What we really focus on is making the city more amenable, safe and friendly for biking, and that's really our campaign called Connecting the City. What we found in polls is that 40% of San Francisco adults, it's just adults, say, I would like to bike, or I would like to bike more. Their number one challenge or impediment is feeling safe on the street. It's not the hills. So people might immediately think, San Francisco, how can you bike there? And I'll be honest, I'm not a very strong rider. I avoid the hills. I go around, wherever I can, or I walk the bike up a couple of blocks if I need to. There's a lot of flat streets in San Francisco. People may be surprised. We found all of them as bicyclists. But what people say is, I want to bike more, but I'm nervous about the traffic. So what are we doing about that? We're building out the citywide bike network, more dedicated bike lanes. And they're worried about bike theft, as with any major city, theft is a problem. We're seeing tons and tons more bike parking. And I highlight this one. We have now about 40, I think, on-street bike parking corrals in the city. Each one of these is replacing, on average, 2 car parking spaces. Now, while our goal is not to replace the car parking spaces, it's pretty exciting to see that you can fit on average about a dozen bicycles there in the place that you used to be able to fit just 2 cars. So a great maximization of space. Different than Long Beach, and not to pick on you guys, but in our scenario up in San Francisco, both with these on-street bike parking corrals and what we call parklets, that extension of cafe space or restaurant space, we're not actually replacing the parking. If they can, they will, but that's not a requirement. Even despite that, so losing these parking spaces and adding bike parking or parklets, businesses are hankering for it. There is a backlog of probably 60 or 70 businesses right now saying, it needs to go through a city process, but city, come take away the car parking right in front and put the bike parking. It's not just cafes, it's not just bike shops, it's now all sorts of places. Clothes shops, banks, yoga studios, all sorts of places that are seeing that value. Bike access to transit is a major issue for us, regional transit. This is our BART regional system, and that's been an important one. Bike share, I want to credit then Mayor Newsom for bringing bike share. Well, came right after you left, I believe. It took a while, as things do in our city. But I think it was, I'll let you share, a trip to Lyon, France, I believe, where you were really inspired. And we were so excited to be, I think we are the first city in California that did finally bring bike share. We're a little bit behind DC and New York, but fantastic, successful program that's growing. And I'm going to share a shot. This is Mayor Newsom and other city leaders. I think this was 2007 in painting our city's first bike box. It was also the state's first bike box. This may not sound very exciting, but just to share the things we get excited about in the bike community. It's basically an advanced line on the street. You can't see very well here, but a place where bikes can queue up at the traffic light and then spring ahead or move ahead so that they're visible. And I want to give huge credit to our open streets. We call it Sunday Streets in San Francisco. We were indeed the first California city to launch this and worked very closely with Mayor Newsom, and it was amazing. It was a case where there was a lot of skepticism, fair to say, from the businesses. What do you mean you're going to close the street to cars? And that was the language, close the street to cars. You'll hear us very much use the words of open the streets to people. And a very busy and successful tourist area, probably the most busy and successful tourist area in San Francisco, was really worried because this event, Open Streets, on a Sunday morning would go right in front of their door, literally. And they said, oh, you're going to kill our business, it's going to be terrible. After one event, they were begging for it to come back. It now comes there twice a year, moves around different locations. The businesses love it. I think it's one of the best, I don't want to say unlikely, but new alliances that we as bicycle advocates have built with the business community locally, because we're bringing people to their front door. People stop and they buy things and they see things they've never seen. Notice, oh, it's a new cafe, it's a new bike shop, it's a new bookshop. We've also seen studies that San Francisco and other cities, people who walk, bike, and take transit spend more money on local business than people driving. People driving buy more at a time. They're buying larger quantities and look like they're spending more each time, but when you look over the span of a month, on average, folks taking sustainable modes of transportation are also actually spending more. So in short, San Franciscans love bicycling. I want to share a few numbers. The numbers of people biking are growing, as I shared, but even when we poll regular citizens, folks who aren't necessarily bicycling, we're seeing dramatic numbers. We as a nonprofit invest every other year in a professional poll. We hire David Binder pollster up in San Francisco to do an independent poll. And our 2013, this was in fall of 2013 poll, showed that 3/4 of San Francisco adults believe bicycling is good for San Francisco. 2/3 support adding physically separated bikeways. That's the bikeways with the physical separation from the car traffic. And 62% want to increase bike trips by at least 10 to 15% in the next 5 years. I think what we're seeing is, even for those who may not be getting the direct benefits, like myself who rides every day, folks are seeing the value in a more bike-friendly city. The same poll showed that the top number, 25% of San Franciscans bike more than once a week. So that's, again, somebody like me who rides 5 days a week, or maybe it's just once a week. But even more interesting to me is that 7 in 10 ride a bike at some, what was the number here? That was, I think, over a month. 7 in 10 ride over a month. Now that might just be an afternoon in the park. It might be one trip over a month. But that's a vast majority are biking a little bit. And that's really our prospective audience. Is how do we encourage and help them bike more? A more updated number, we got more recent numbers literally yesterday, that 96% increase of biking in the city between these years. And why is this all important to you all? Whether you like bicycling or not, I would say that the bicycle community is indeed a growing community to watch in the political environment. Because people who bike, at least in my experience and working with other advocates in cities in particular, people who bike vote. And they care a lot about what those candidates and what different referendums are doing for their ride. And I don't want to sound selfish. A lot of us are involved with advocacy and bike because we understand the benefits to a better city. I don't need to tell you about the environmental, the health, the density and local economic boons we talked about. But in the end, most people vote for what they see as their self-interest, right? Is this going to be good for me and my family in the long run? We know that. People connect very much to their everyday commute to work, much more, frankly, than transit riders, than people who drive or people who walk. There's not necessarily a community or an identity. For whatever reason, there's a very strong identity among people who bicycle. And I'm just going to share a little bit about how we make the most of that in our community. This is last year's Bike to Work Day with our now Mayor, Ed Lee. I can't tell you the turnout we see on our annual Bike to Work Day from just regular folks. We religiously get 9 or 10, 11 of the members of our Board of Supervisors, most of the major directors, department directors, et cetera, to come out and bike. And I think now actually between Mayor Lee now in, Mayor Newsom before 8 years, Mayor Brown, Willie Brown 8 years before that, every single year on annual Bike to Work Day coming up in May, we have ridden with the mayor of San Francisco. It is not an event they want to miss, which is a great thing. And why is that? Partly we know they understand the benefits, again, to the environment, to health, to livability, to affordability, to access. But in the end, it's because they're hearing from us. We are very vocal. People in the bike community, they know what matters to their, again, their everyday ride. This is just an image. There was a real problem at this intersection. We geared up in literally overnight. We put out an email. We're also very connected, frankly, online, social media. We put out an email at maybe 4 or 5 p.m. one day, and had 100 people turn out the next morning for a rally. This intersection is now fixed. It's not perfect, but it's tremendously safer to be walking and biking through. There was a threat, though, that this bike lane was going to be pulled out. Again, what drives, ironically, what drives people? What pedals people? It is a lot of their own interest, right? It really is thinking about, what do I need in my life? I want to be able to get to work safely. So we've really taken this strong identity and community and turned it into a powerful voting bloc in San Francisco, what we call Bike the Vote. This is from 2 years ago, our most recent, about a year and a half ago, our most recent mayoral election. We do endorsements, like I mentioned. So because our city also does ranked choice voting, we also do ranked choice endorsements. So you'll see here our 3 choices last cycle for mayor. We also endorsed in a measure, Proposition B was a major funding measure, exciting measure to increase street repaving. Not the sexiest thing in the world, right? But all of a sudden you've got literally hundreds of volunteers out there saying, this is life and death to me. How smooth the streets are really matters to me. And we just barely got the 2/3 needed to pass this, and we're really proud now that we have funding to repave our streets. One of the great things about bicyclists too is that we're so visible, right? We're not sealed away in our box of whether it's a bus or a train or a car. We're really out there on the street. People see each other, they identify. We can catch you, we know where you're riding. We set up this tent, we give out our flyers. This is an example of this past election about a year and a half ago. And again, folks stop, they want to know, what do you guys think about this race? We turn people out for phone banking. The passion, phone banking is the hardest thing to get somebody to do, right? You think door knocking is hard? Phone banking, no, please. We turn out 20, 30 people for our candidates. We have bike night. It's literally called bike night. We do special valet bike parking outside. We bring lots of good food, as you can imagine. And we talk to people in a language that they care about. Safety. It's for everyone. It's for you. Really thinking about, how's this going to help your commute, your life, literally. So I'm really proud that we worked on all of these campaigns this past year. Obviously, out of the top 3, we did get 1 elected. It was number 3, and we're proud of that. He wasn't our top 3. I want to also share that the campaigns are now embracing the identity of bicyclists. And that's a big switch from 10 or 20 years ago. It used to be a little bit of the other, right? Oh, those crazy people, they're messengers, they have purple hair, they're all like angry 18-year-old guys. Well, they're not. This is my board president of the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition and her daughter. And the folks for Prop B, for that streets repaving measure, came to us and said, can you guys help us put a flyer out? So this was their mailer. not ours, we didn't pay for it, their mailer, that they then embraced the bicycling agenda. I want to show you some others. David Chu, one of the candidates running for mayor back then, and this is his piece. We didn't twist his arm for this. He went out and did one of his pieces about Market Street and biking. Ditto, another piece. He said, hey, I want to know some bike families. I want to do some pieces around biking. Another one, you'll see the Bike Network front and center there. I should mention, he does bicycle every day. He is really walking the walk and pedaling the pedal, so this is not just a show. Eric Moore, one of our local supervisors. You'll see a little bit of the highlight there, but really showcasing the Bicycle Coalition's endorsement of him in his local race. And Mayor Lee, who did win the race, hard to see, but the very top left corner, you'll see a shot of him and a few of us riding on Bike to Work Day. So great to see that a candidate who, wasn't traditionally necessarily embracing biking, wasn't somebody we had a long relationship with, frankly, really embraced it through this campaign because he saw the power of that voting bloc. And we're not shy about it. Our logo is, I vote and I bike the vote. It's not all we do. I'd say our time as an organization, it's maybe 4 or 5% of our overall work. But that 4 or 5% has dividends throughout the year in terms of course, our influence and getting the ear of our local politicians and really being seen as an influence in our city. So I will pause there and open up to questions.